Productions on the track. Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are the political junkies back at it again. And here for another week. Thank you for being with us. We took a break last Monday for President's Day. But there's a lot of news to cover and to talk about. Let me introduce my peoples. David is in the building, and Kimberly is in the building. What's going on, David?
Hi. Not a ton. Well, I was gonna say, personally, Day and I launched the podcast, so there's episodes. Yes. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We should be releasing another episode this week, and then you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Patreon at Call Me Limbo Pod.
Damn. Awesome. Excited about that. I'm gonna check that out as soon as the show is over. I definitely got to check that out. Kimberly, what's going on?
Not much.
Yeah. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Let's get right into it. One of the things that is going to be going on this Saturday. Let's talk about the Marianne Williamson is going to be launching her campaign against Biden. So I think it's interesting how the 2024 campaign is definitely, we're in the thick of it, because on the Republican side we got Hale, what's her name?
Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley. It just slipped me for a quick second. Nikki Haley jumped in the race. There's other people that's going to be jumping in race. Of course, Donald Trump already jumped in the race. And then on the Democrat side, I've clipped a lot recently, and I like to throw out there all the clips because you see how mainstream media is covering Marianne Williamson, who is supposed to be to the left of Biden, who's to the left of Biden as far as Medicare for all and various other domestic policy. You see how the media is treating her and how there's like kind of dissing her and saying she's illegitimate. So I post whenever I see that, I like to put that up as a case study to show how we get, as far as leftists get marginalized. And it definitely reminds me of 2016 Bernie Sanders when he first got in the race. And matter of fact, I don't think they even covered him. They didn't even touched when he first jumped in the race like that. So I know, Kimberly, I want to go straight to you. I know you got some opinions on this, so let's know what you think.
I mean, I guess I will say, like, it's good that somebody's challenging Biden from the left, but if you want me to be honest, do I think she has a chance? No. One, because the Democratic Party is, it's a mess when you're like wading through these primaries, but more so than that, I just don't see her as being somebody who can like create a massive working class like base. I don't see her as being able to do that. I mean,
what do you think is the obstacle? And let me get a quick shout out to Will Pilgrim in the chat, Holly Horn in the chat, Miguel H. Much love to my peoples. So, let's dig into that a little bit. What do you think is her problem?
I don't think she comes from that world. I mean, the way that she speaks, the way that she acts, this is not somebody who came from the working class, and it's very obvious to see. I mean, she was like, what was she, Oprah's spiritual advisor or something of that sort? Like she's coming from a very different world, and I just don't think that this is the kind of person who can truly unite working people across the country. It's just like, it's good that you're running against Biden since nobody's gonna run against him, but it's also like, you're not somebody who could like honestly be like a potent leader for the left. Like I just think like a potent leader for the left needs to come from the working class, and it's just like, this is not a woman who comes from that. And I'm also a little bit worried about, I think she can be pushed to the right, I mean, I remember some of her debate performances back in 2020, and her answers towards Medicare for All were a little bit shaky. And that already to me signals somebody who, like, this is somebody who can be pushed rightward, especially since you don't really have a true working class base that is going to keep you accountable either. Sorry,
All
my
right.
dog's in the background.
Yeah, no worries. Let me see if we might have a potential no calzone here if David might disagree. So let's see what happens. Go ahead. I don't know if David, you got a response.
It's interesting. I was like, if it's only between her and Biden, if Marianne and Joe Biden in the primaries, I would most likely support Marianne. Just knowing that her ideology and her worldview aligns a little bit more closely with mine. I was like, is she aligned with everything that I would necessarily agree upon? Probably not. However, if it was just between those two, I probably would vote for her in the primary. I also would maybe challenge a little bit too in thinking about how, like, a lot of people also said that Donald Trump had no chance at winning or getting the Republican nomination. And then, but he set the narrative, and he got people to talk about him, and he got people to respond to him instead of him responding to other people. And I think if Marianne wants to control the narrative, I think that she needs to be as outspoken, as much of a like message setter herself, and getting people to respond to her instead of responding to attacks on her.
Gotcha. Let me give Miguel H a shout out. At this point, anyone is preferable than Biden, but ultimately nothing will fundamentally change. So yeah, Miguel H is a total cynic in that area. I'm hoping something can change. I need student loan debt forgiveness. I don't know about you, David and Kimberly, but even like just recently, just today, somebody, I'm not gonna say just who, but a family member had an operation. They paid for the bill like a couple weeks ago, and it was a couple $100 hurt the pocket. Sure. Paid for the bill. Then today we got in the mail a surprise bill for the anesthesia. Apparently there was two people that did the anesthesia, and it was like $1,300 each person. Jeez. So now we got like a $2,700 bill just for the anesthesia. And mind you, the operation was like a couple $100. So this cost, the operation was way less than the actual anesthesia. I'm like, just keep me awake. You know, in that case, I'll just stay awake and take the pain or whatever if it was me. But I mean, This is just highway. This is the mafia on another level. This is like the healthcare mafia. Just, they didn't even tell us that ahead of time. If I can understand you said ahead of time, like, oh, by the way, this is going to be because of the operation, and over here is going to be the cost of the anesthesia. So you at least say, okay, I can make a decision. Let me hold off this operation for a little while, even though that's problematic in itself, actually. Yeah. But I was thinking, why don't they just make it $1 million? Just go ahead for it. Just go for everything. Just say, hey, here's a surprise bill for $1 million. But this is why I'm so desperate for Medicare for All to come into fruition. This is why I'm for, like, anybody has any idea, Holly Horn in the chat, Miguel H, anybody. That's why I was for the March for Medicare for All marches that happened in the different states, and then the one that happened in DC. And if there's any other Medicare for All marches, I'm going to be on board right away because I'm just so desperate for it. All right, let's get to the first clip of the night, and I'm just going to go ahead and play it here. See.
Fighting for the right to vote in what could be Nigeria's.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Can you all hear it?
Mm-hmm. People getting pretty agitated here. It's day 2 since the election. They should have voted, but they didn't get to vote. It's become so hectic that the military has been called in to try and keep the peace.
The Nigerian army rolled into a neighborhood in Lagos where voters at 2 polling units spent all of election day waiting to cast their ballots, but poll officials did not show up. They returned the next day and waited several more hours, growing impatient as the chance to vote slowly slipped away.
Nothing works in this country. Nothing works in this country. There is no security. There is no good hospitals. There's neither good roads. Nothing works. The educational system is in shambles. And for once, youth are coming out to vote. And we are being disenfranchised in broad daylight. It is heartbreaking.
Abigail Samuel's pain shared by other young people who registered to vote in record numbers in this election, hoping to reboot a deeply dysfunctional Nigeria.
I must fight for my daughter, praise. I must fight for her. She must have a better life. She must go to better school. I'm tired. I'm tired. We are tired. I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing this crap.
Officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission say they're already tallying the results of the area without the missing polling units.
I just want to pause real quick that you just see the emotion in the citizens, and it just it breaks my heart. But I also sympathize because to a certain extent, we don't have the exact same problem that they have, but we have a version of that problem where we have an electoral system that we have a mass amount of people feel disenfranchised, feel like their vote doesn't even count, that they don't even participate in the system. You know, we had, even whether you're for Marianne or not, you have our media's just out discounting her seriousness and just discounting her as not to be a challenge to Biden, as if Biden is a king, and as if he's we have a dictator that you can't even challenge him. So I just want to point that out real quick. And it's about to go into the exact issues of what's going on in Nigeria right now.
They're already tallying the results of the area without the missing polling units.
We use constitution. Anywhere there is violence, there's no way to vote again.
But CNN saw no signs of violence at the polling units where election workers did not show up as people cast ballots just steps away.
So there will be no other election in these places where the election didn't take place?
There's no other election again. There's no other election. The election we want to do is what we've done.
The disenfranchised voters see this as an attempt to deny their preferred candidates crucial votes by the establishment. In an election without an incumbent president or a former military leader running, it was seen as a fresh start for Nigeria.
We are suffering in this country. We are suffering. It's very bad. I don't even call them leaders. I call them rulers.
Musician Banky W stood on the main opposition PDP's ticket in the Lagos area with the affected voters.
They understand that their votes are their voices and they want their voices to be heard. So when it starts to seem like there's allegedly some sort of intentional suppression of that voice, people get frustrated, people get agitated.
Nigeria's agitated youth could be a powder keg at risk of exploding if enough of them feel that their voices were not heard in the most significant election of their lifetime.
What did voting mean to you?
It's my choice and I did my best. That's what it means to me.
Larry Medowo, CNN, Lagos.
Yeah, this was in the midst. I don't know if y'all remember. I believe it was it 2020? There was a massacre. I forgot the exact name of the massacre where the army came in and just totally started shooting up a big a mass amount of people came together protesting, and so out of that we come these years later that they have an opportunity to elect somebody that's not part of the, necessarily from what I read, wasn't part of the military. They could legitimately elect somebody democratically. And now the way that they vote in those certain areas, there's the electors are supposed to come around and collect their votes, and that's how their votes get counted. But they've been waiting, as you can see from the videos. They're just waiting for the people to come so that they can vote. And they're like, are we going to vote today? And they're like, no, you can't vote today. And if you don't vote today, your vote doesn't count, period. And it's just some like next level kind of voter disenfranchisement. Yeah, let me get any comment from you guys. What you think about that?
Wow. First of all, it's so sad.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what I think is really interesting is I'm like, it's hard to, well, one, in my mind, like the passion that I heard in so many of the people interviewed, to me, I would almost equate as patriotism, and just thinking about like, I want my country to have free and fair, or what feels like fair elections. Like, my vote is going to count, or like I am out of many one. Similar to our like philosophy around like e pluribus unum. And so it's like we are all Nigerians here to vote. Let's vote. Can we vote? Yeah.
It's definitely sad. I can't imagine, like, I think here we take our vote for granted in a big way, but I have to talk for myself, because there are places like down south where people have to wait hours upon hours and hours just to vote. And I can't lie. I don't know if I would wait hours and hours to vote. So I definitely, where I vote is a pretty progressive town. I could go in and vote within 5 minutes. Literally, I've never took longer than 10 minutes to vote. And but there are people who just like, hey, I'm not going to vote, period. And if it's could take you only 5 minutes to vote, that's kind of taking your vote for granted. While people here are desperate to vote, they want to vote because they know they can change their system through voting. But here they're not being able to vote. What you think, Kimberly?
I mean, it was interesting what that military lady said. She was like, "We're running the election we want to run." I mean, that right there tells you all you need to know. They seen which areas were probably gonna, vote for a more progressive candidate, and we're like, we're not picking up those votes there.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I'm not. I guess I'm not sure, because here in the U.S., like, you have better voting laws, right? But even so, what happens is, like, in the US, you can vote more easily, but they control which candidates can run from the beginning. So it's always a situation when it comes to voting where, like, you move forward on giving people more rights to vote and stuff, but the tactics to, like, undermine that become more and more insidious. Like, if these folks could be able to vote regularly, kind of the way many people in America could, then the next step for the establishment is we control who can run in the first place.
Yeah. So speaking, while we're on this topic of elections, I want to bring up this next topic right now, which is basically the Californian race. We got the California race going on. It's just sharing. Here we go.
There we go.
And I hope you all can see. There we go. Boom. All right. So we have Adam Schiff at 22, and then we have Katie Porter.
Running?
No, he didn't announce. So they just added him just to see what happened.
I'm like, what?
Yeah. Then you got Barbara Lee. And much love to Jamon M93 that jumped in the chat, and Kat Terrell. Much love to y'all in the chat. Yeah, let's talk some. I love talking political strategy and talking this type of stuff. So we got Adam Schiff, which I think is pretty known. Well known that he's not the one. He's not it. He's not it, right? And please, if anyone disagree with me, let me know. We can have that no calzone debate. But so it's between Katie Porter, Barbara Lee, Ro Khanna's. I don't think he's gonna jump in, because he said that if Barbara Lee was running, that he wouldn't run. And matter of fact, he probably would endorse Barbara Lee. The interesting thing is, Barbara Lee, the last time I checked, I think she had like 54,000 in her account, while Katie Porter had like 6 million, and then Adam Schiff had like 20 million. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there with the money. Let me remove this. But yeah, what y'all think about this? David, let me go to you first.
I'm happy to see that Dianne Feinstein is stepping down. So
that's true.
That's kind of my first thought. I love Katie Porter. And I hope points. I guess I'm just curious, like, if if people are still thinking about the impeachment when Adam Schiff was kind of the impeachment, was he the impeachment manager? Was that his role? Or
yeah, he played a big role in it. Yeah.
And so I'm curious what Californians would think of that, because I know that some of the circles that I was in around that time were big Adam Schiff lovers.
Yeah.
Just because of that. So I'd be curious about
Okay, what you think, Kimberly?
I mean, it's a strange race. I do like Barbara Lee. Katie Porter's all right. But I mean, ultimately, both of them are squishy progressives in the sense that, I mean, I think Katie Porter has probably challenged the establishment more times than Barbara Lee has really. Barbara is very quiet. She's taken some good votes here and there, but it's just like, girl, like good votes mean nothing if you're not like pushing this past just a dead end on the Congress floor. So I don't think either of them are going to be, whichever one of them, if they do get elected, is going to be somebody who's going to be like, really fighting the establishment in that sense. I'm always skeptical of people who supported Warren over Bernie, because to me that was the easiest layup. There was a candidate there who was from the working class, who was supported by the working class, and Warren was supported by upper middle class people who are overeducated, a tiny segment of the population, which it showed because she did terrible in nearly every state. And to me, it's just like, you like, what planet were you living on that you thought that this was a stronger candidate than Bernie? Like the guy who created the movement that she's trying to hijack. Like, it doesn't. So those type of people, I'm always very skeptical of them, because I don't think that their politics are strong enough to withstand pressure. But it looks like Katie Porter probably has a better chance, not only because she has more money, but it does seem like she's built more of like a presence really in Congress. Barbara, I mean, the only thing I can really think about was when she was going to run against Nancy, but then she backed out last second for leadership. And so all this type of stuff, I'm just like, Katie Porter's younger.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that I saw and I clipped all her interviews. Matter of fact, she had a couple interviews over the weekend that I still got to take a look at. But all her preliminary interviews since she announced that she's going to run has not been impressive at all. Like she ran and said, I'm a progressive, and I'm looking for a fighter. I think Kimberly, you said it absolutely right when you said she's a quiet progressive. I think that's what you said. Like my congressperson in my district is Bonnie Watson Coleman, who is a progressive. But I would agree she's a quiet progressive in the sense that I don't really have to call her to say, hey, I need you to co-sponsor Medicare for All, or that Medicare for All bill, or this progressive bill, or that bill. She's going to do it on her own, most likely, but she's not going to talk about it. You're not going to see her on independent media. She's not going to be on CNN. I've seen her on MSNBC a couple of times, but not really pushing aggressively for progressive policy. So she's a quiet progressive. And we have like 100 of people, over I think 103 people or so in the United States House Progressive Caucus, but it's like you don't feel that. It's the biggest caucus in the House, and you just don't feel that you have that progressive voice pushing for progressive things. You don't see the result of it. So I totally agree with you in that area. Yeah. All right. So much love to Cheryl Patrick that jumped in the chat. And let's go on to this other clip. I know last time we had a stream, we talked about child labor, but More Perfect Union had a very good video on this. So I'm going to play that right now. Oh, let me share this tab. There we go.
Almost every industry in every state is facing some kind of staffing shortage. In Iowa, the legislature is looking to use children to fill the gaps. A frustrating proposition for federal officials.
Yeah, the answer is not child labor. I mean, we have labor laws in this country, and organized labor. Quite honestly, one of the big reasons organized labor formed in the late 1900s, early 20th century, is because of child labor laws.
The bill in question, Senate File 167, expands the use of child labor. If it passed, 14-year-olds in Iowa could be sent to meatpacking plants, construction and demolition sites, or even deep into mines underground, as long as they are in approved apprenticeship programs. Kids can work longer in later hours. During the school year, 16-year-olds could work 6 hours a day and up to 28 a week. That expands to the standard 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week after Labor Day. Employers also get extra protections. They would not be liable for any injuries unless in cases of gross negligence or willful misconduct. Instead, it would be schools and apprenticeship programs that would be liable. Walsh said there are solutions for Iowa's workforce that don't involve sending kids into dangerous jobs.
Yep. That is absolutely nuts. Let me what is that? Let me move that there. Boom. Absolutely nuts. I mean, I can't believe that we're going back in time to these days of your child labor. And unfortunately, you would think there's going to be people thinking, oh, but I'll never send my kid to go out there and work. But I remember when I was young and I couldn't wait to get some of my own money and to work somewhere. And so if you're desperate and you, especially if you're desperate, but if you just want to get your own money, you don't want to have to rely on your parents, you're going to be enticed to go get a job. But then you see that they're not looking out for you. They're not. A lot of these jobs are absolutely horrible to work.
Yes. What's interesting is Colorado, I feel like has pretty good labor protections. But even like JBS, which was shown in the clip, was got in trouble for hiring minors in their meatpacking facility just about an hour north of Denver in Greeley, Colorado, which has a huge meatpacking facility. And so I'm like, I think it's really important to have these laws on the books to say like, we're not going to stand for this. Like kids should not be working in meat processing facilities. But two, I also think that we need to have an economic system that does not require the kids to have to go work in these kind of conditions in the first place. I remember some of my first jobs were around like tutoring and also like I mowed lawns, which I'm like that was kind of hazardous too in retrospect.
How old were you when you did it?
I think I started when I was like 12 or 13. So like,
okay.
Yeah, it was like my grandma's lawn.
It's sketchy.
Yeah, right. But it kind of expanded throughout. But I was like throughout high school, it was nice to make some of my own money. But it is dangerous. And so, but again, it's like, why did we have to do that? And I'm like, my parents were public school teachers. And so it's like, hey, they had the summers off. Like, let's go work because teachers didn't make a ton of money. And so as additional income. And so it's to try to teach me how to perform capitalism as well, that I call it. But yeah. So I think we need the laws and we need to change the.
Yeah. Kat said, that could also depend on whether these kids are in a region or rural area where the industry is where they'll be as adults though. Yeah, they're going to try to dress it up and say, oh, we're going to give them an apprentice program and we're going to do this and we're going to get the parents' permission, all these different things. That's how it's going to start off. And then slowly they're going to pull away all the safety valves from this. And it's just going to turn into younger people working in dangerous areas. And then from there, it's going to be, okay, we got 14-year-olds. Hey, can we do 13-year-olds? Or can we do 12-year-olds? Can we do 11-year-olds? Is this going to go down and get worse from there? Yeah. And instead of just paying people a living wage, because there's a labor shortage, that's the whole problem that they have, just pay people more money and you'll be able to get the labor. Yep. But it just shows how desperate capitalists are for more capital. Kimberly, what you think?
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Oh, I was gonna say, and so many of the people working in these meat processing facilities are like refugees or like undocumented folks too. And so it's like, who is probably working in these? Who are the kids that are working in these facilities? Probably the kids of undocumented folks. So already there aren't many protections in place for the adults who are working there, let alone these kids. So, Kimberly, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, you're having trouble finding workers because those type of conditions are conditions nobody wants to work in. And as far as like child labor, like we have to understand why kids that are 14 years old want to even like get a little job, right? It's because their parents don't have money to give them an allowance. This is all a symptom of poverty. If your parents had, stability and had enough money, you wouldn't have to go out there and work for like a business for money. You could do chores around the house and that's, your work. And you can get allowance that way. But we're talking about, people who come from households where there isn't enough money. And so the kid already at a young age is like, okay, I need to like start pulling in some money. And like what we should be doing is, not co-signing that situation, but agreeing that there's something seriously wrong with the labor market. People
100.
don't want to pay wages that are needed for some of these jobs. And these jobs are very dangerous. I mean, the meatpacking industry, there's always an article out there about, people's like nails falling off and all types of disasters that happen, out of meatpacking industry. And we want to put a 14-year-old in there, especially during like school time. I mean,
yeah, terrible. Let me give a shout out to, I saw Paul Patrick in the chat, Steve in the chat, PJ Chris, long time no see in the chat. Much love to you. I think somebody had a question for you, Kimberly. Say, speaking of running, Miss DeCoupe, how you pronounce that name there? I don't want to butcher that name. Sicilian? Cicilline is out. What are you doing? What do you think about the situation, Kimberly?
Yeah, my Congress man has decided to retire, so he can head a nonprofit that's going to pay him more than $500,000. So
money. Wow. That's what you do. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get into politics, do some favors, then you jump out and make some money, right? Go ahead, Kimberly.
I wasn't expecting him to retire so soon because, a lot of these people are like, I have to die in my seat. But yeah, he's retiring. I'm not trying to get into that race because it's just like, I don't know if I really want to wade into a Democratic primary again. But I do have a friend who's thinking about running, Cynthia Mendes. She ran for lieutenant governor last time around. And, if she decides to run, I will support her.
Okay. Cool. So that sounds good. So hopefully that answers your question out there. Rhode Island found cozy ass. I guess that's funny. All right, let's go to our next story. I want to talk about stock buybacks, and apparently, Bernie looks like Bernie is pushing Biden to do put taxes on stock buybacks. Now the question is, how much does Biden actually want to do it? Because when he wants to do something like break up railroad strikers, he gets that done real quick. But when it comes to stock buybacks, we'll see what happens in this arena. So let me play the video.
He had a ringing word or two for those people who run the country on buybacks, didn't he?
That's right. And it's unusual because usually he does tend to stay away of making these controversial statements, but this time he obviously felt he needed to. This was in a shareholder letter that goes alongside the results. And to quote what he said, if you think that buybacks are harmful, you are listening to either an economic illiterate or a silver-tongued demagogue. The characters that are not mutually exclusive. So quite strong words from him. And as you say, this followed comments from Joe Biden, where he's calling for taxes on buybacks to be quadrupled, and also taxes on billionaires to be stepped up as well. So strong words from Buffett to Biden.
Fight and talk from Buffett to Biden. There you go. Our senior finance editor, Stefania Bianchi, on the very latest with Berkshire Hathaway. And Bernie Sanders was all over British terrestrial channels at the weekend, talking about billionaires, how much you should have, and how to do well on TikTok. I'm going to go back and watch that again. Coming up, listen, Luke.
He just had to put in that snarky remark there. I'm going to play another clip that's actually on Fox Business that kind of gives a different opinion of this. But just to let people know who might not be too familiar with stock buyback, and I just want to give a very simple version so we can keep it moving. But stock buyback is what companies use the profits to buy back their stocks from off of the stock market, so that when they take away the stocks from off of the stock market, it raises the price. It makes there less shares out there, which means there's more demand, therefore raising their stocks. Now, a lot of times the CEOs and the board of directors, these people, they're incentivized for their stocks to go up, and they get bonuses when the stocks go up. So they're basically putting money into their own pockets, while instead of doing stock buybacks, they can be invested in R&D, research and development. Like if they're pharmaceutical companies, they could actually be looking for real cures to different diseases. Or if they're in the technology area, they can be looking to, advance their technology, but they're just trying to make themselves more money. So this is one way that I'm sure this idea came from Bernie, to try to tax the rich, because that's been the goal for a while with the big disparity in from the rich to the poor. We're trying to see how we can get back some of that capital. So let me play, unless you guys got something to say, I'm going to play this other side of the debate. All right. So boom.
You've always been sort of an advocate, for workers, and I guess you've been suggesting these buybacks and these massive spikes in dividend payouts. Maybe that could have been some money diverted to workers. When corporations start to do that, isn't that a slippery slope, though, particularly for shareholders?
Shareholders are not the people who are showing up at the office every day, who are showing up at the factories. They're not the people who are driving value in the economy. So yeah, your shareholders might not love it, but I think that your employees will, and good employees make good companies.
But ultimately, you have to make a profit, too.
Absolutely. But, you look at these record dividends, these record buybacks that were happening over the past couple of years, where employees were getting very, very little, if any, sort of raises. And that's starting to be a big problem in this economy.
I know that you have.
There you go. I'm glad she was on the show. And it's just, I just thought it was so funny. He's like, but they got to make money, right? That's more important. She's here trying to say, hey, it's the people that matters. It's the workers. They bring in the capital through their sweat and blood and tears. And he's like, what is the money, right? We got to get the money. What do you think about this, David?
Oh, my goodness. I've got so many thoughts. One, I would love for the workers doing the actual frontline work to be paid the true value of their labor. The other thing, I guess the question that I have is how is this not considered a Ponzi scheme? Especially knowing that the people who are in control of the financial records, know the financial status of the company, and then they can buy more shares, sometimes at discounted prices, before they report their quarterly earnings. It is wild to me that this is legal. And I was I've realized that in this country, legality does not seem to equate with ethics. And I think that I think it should. And two, I was I would love to see a 99% tax on billionaires. Once you make your 1 billion, you can keep 1% of that. That's $10 million. That's still a lot of money. And so I would love it. Tax. That's the thing. There can still be billionaires, but make them pay $990 million in taxes, and they can keep the other 10 million. But that's me being generous.
Abolish the billionaires. I agree with you on that one. I think there's so much money, and unfortunately, they have so much power that goes along with all that money, where they can just invest into so much nefarious things. And that's why they're winning the class war right now. This is class warfare right in front of us. And we need to wake up to it, because they know there's one side of this that knows there's a class war going on, and they're fighting and they're winning. And it's just the other side that, unfortunately, we're fighting the culture war instead of fighting the class war. And you know, that's a whole other story that we could talk about. What you think about this, Kimberly?
Yeah, I think like David said, I'm not sure that we need to be looking at taxing this. I think that we need to be looking at banning this outright. I mean, like it's just a scheme to pump your, your stock artificially. It's obviously manipulating.
And it used to be banned too, Kimberly. It used to be banned, I think, in the 80s, and it came back. But go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah, because it's manipulation of the market. I mean, it should be banned outright. But as far as like this whole movement to like tax it or whatever, I don't know. Maybe I'm a cynic, but it just seems that every time the Biden administration goes about like, hey, we're going to do this one good thing, then you find out like they kind of neutered the policy to hell. And ultimately it makes no difference in like the grand scheme of things. And it's like, even the way that we're talking about this, we're talking about taxing an action that is supposed to be illegal. You're already giving them way too much leeway. You need to throw these people in prison, not, hand out fines for bad work.
No, I totally agree. Matter of fact, I think that we need to bring back, and I talked about this on the show like maybe a year ago, something called the death penalty, the corporate death penalty, which is basically you're taking away the charter from a corporation. So, I think Norfolk, that's the company that's had the real derailments and just totally chemically nuking a whole town of East Palestine, Ohio. Like, this is not the first time. They've had many other spills, and that's an example that if I was president, or I would hope a progressive or a leftist in there would say, hey, here's an example of a corporation that needs to have their charter taken away, and we're going to nationalize. The government is going to take over. We're going to give the workers a living wage, and matter of fact, we're going to increase their pay. We're going to give them 14 days of sick days or unlimited sick days and vacation days. And we're going to hire more people, because a lot of times they have like 2 or 3 people running trains that's like a mile long. You need more workers to be able to identify and see when there's something going wrong. And that's why a lot of these times there's these real derailments. But let me go back to David.
Yeah, I was gonna say about the train derailments. I've actually been talking with Day a lot about this. I remember in the year 2000, growing up in my hometown, there was a train derailment that spilled thousands of gallons of benzene in the community. Wow. Yes, and the whole community. About a quarter to a third of the whole town had to evacuate. Like, we were worried about drinking our water because of how it soaked into the ground. The air just smelled flammable. And I was like, that, let alone that derailment, but then there were other coal train derailments through where I grew up. So I was like, the disregard for not only the environment, but the people who are living in these communities where these train tracks cross through, a lot of which are working class communities, is I think representative about how they feel about the larger working class. I remember when I worked in corporate America, the PR BS that they would espouse about, we have 4 sets of shareholders, and each one of them is equal: the employees, the customers, the community, and the stockholders. It was all just lip service. It was all it was when we're cutting hours for the frontline employees because we had to increase the profit at any expense, and it was usually so that the frontline workers couldn't pay their bills because their hours were being cut. Just so that the company could post record profits. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's sad, but I think even though I've seen a lot of mainstream media cover this story, I think, and thankfully to the lever, they kind of made this a bigger story and they brought it into the ether of the mainstream media conscience. I still think they're not covering it from the angle that we need to cover it from. They need to talk about, and I think Nina Turner, she touched on this when she was on CNN yesterday, where this is not just a one administration thing. This didn't just happen under Trump. It's happening under Biden right now. The deregulations also got pulled back under Trump, and under Barack Obama, they didn't do enough regulation because they were supposed to fortify, have those the trains fortified even greater, so that even if a derailment happened, the spill wouldn't happen because the trucks would be fortified. Not the trucks, but the trains would be fortified even more. So the Obama administration could have definitely done more to prevent something like this from happening.
I mean,
So
everyone could have done more. The whole thing is that nobody actually cares. Okay. This didn't happen in Beverly Hills or the places where these politicians live. If it happened in their backyard, guess what? There would have been hell to pay immediately, because ultimately we're living in a country that is declaring that some people's lives matter and other people's lives doesn't. And if you're part of the elite, whether it's political elite, the economic elite, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of power, you know, your society acts like your life matters. Meanwhile, if you're just an everyday Joe, then you can be sacrificed for whatever is needed. But, you know, I will say I'm not like, as far as the elected left in Congress, I haven't heard too much like strong pushback from them. And I'm just like, this is the continuous problem with these folks. Like, you have a situation here where, you know, thousands of people are potentially being, you know, poisoned. They're living in an area where 45,000 animals are dead. And where is like, there's no aggression there about like Biden, you know, Pete Buttigieg, you have to do something or else, you know, I'm going to go to the ends of the world calling you out, going to, you know, Ohio. But you just don't see that. And it's just, it's part of like why I'm losing hope that that this particular group of people can actually make anything happen, because we're seeing really disgusting tragedies happening. And the level of anger that is needed is just non-existent.
No, I have to say, I did see Ilhan Omar. She tweeted something, but I agree with you where this could be a unifying effort from the progressives to separate themselves from the rest of the neoliberals or liberals in the Democratic Party and truly push.
Like, I need less tweets. Yeah. Why don't these like Hollywood actors go down to Ohio together and basically bring their campaign money and do some mutual aid while calling out Biden and letting these people know, like, hey, this could actually be stopped if, you know, Pete were actually to enact some of these what do you call it?
Regulations.
Yeah, exactly. Enact regulations that he himself, by himself, as a transportation secretary, can do. We don't need anyone else. We don't need Congress. He can make the situation instantly safer for the future right now. And I feel like that is, instead we have Trump going down there. I mean, this is not going to look good for 2024. And I mean, it's not just about elections, but it's just like people keep losing the plot.
No, actually, there was somebody that actually talked about this. I'm going to bring up the clip. Oh, here it is. I actually have a good clip on this right now. Let me bring this in here. Boom.
Some others demonstrated they can connect.
Mistake for him not to go? Should he go now? Is it too late?
He should go. This is an extraordinary event, not just for the people of East Palestine, but it has come to stand for something bigger in the country. And Democrats do have something to say to large forces, large corporate forces exploiting people in rural America. They're losing on the cultural issues, but as Bernie Sanders and some others have demonstrated, they can connect on that. And he left that trick on the table for Donald Trump to come in and say, I'm your guy, even though it was the Trump administration which changed the regulations, which helped perhaps to contribute to this event. It came to stand for something big in the country, and we look to presidents for leadership on that.
Chris, mistake for him not to go, and is it too late?
Always a mistake not to go. Look.
Okay, I'm not gonna play him too long. I don't want to hear this guy too much. But he basically there's agreement on both the left and the right that Biden should go. Now, in your to go with what you're saying, Kimberly, and I agree with you. There's more to do than just tweets. And that should be the bare minimum. You should be doing more than just tweets. So what if we had
millions of dollars? I just don't get it. Between like the 6-7 of them, they have millions and millions of dollars. What does it take to go down there and do some mutual aid while hammering down on your narrative and your message and putting real pressure on, the Democratic Party elites to actually deal with this situation and show people who usually think that there's no Democrat who cares about them, that there is a group of people who are willing to fight for you and go, to the ends to do what it takes to get you, a better life. But it just, I mean, what was that guy's name there? He was talking about like, hey, the Democrats have a real message to tell to these people. They just have to go out there and say, and it's like, the Democrats don't have a real message. Okay. Just miming these words when people know your actions is not going to work. Like, you can't go out there and tell people you're fighting for them when they have the receipts of what you've actually been doing. Like, the Democrats are really unpopular because they say these things and their actions are so demonstrably like against their words. That has been the problem with the Democratic Party. So no, the Democratic Party has nothing to tell these people. Okay, if they had something to tell these people, it would have been like, this is our action plan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How we're gonna make sure this doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah, Yellen hand delivered another 1.6 billion to Ukraine today. While we have people in East Palestine, we have people in Flint, we have people in Jacksonville, all with horrible water in their system, and we're giving money to people outside of the country. And no, I totally agree. What if we had AOC let's talk about all of them. Ilhan Omar, people who consider themselves progressives. If they were out there saying, hey, this is why we supported Bernie Sanders in 2020. This is why we supported Bernie Sanders in 2016. This is why we're looking for someone who's different than Biden, somebody who's more to the left, because they would have done more. They would have been down there in East Palestine on day one. They would have been forcing Norfolk to pay $1 billion, not 26 million or 20 million. They're giving out $1,000 checks to everybody. They're putting people up in hotels for like a couple of days or whatever and making it seem like that's okay. Oh, you have to rebuild my house. You have to pay me back for the value of my house. Because now all those houses that might have been worth $300,000, now when they go to resell it, who's going to buy those houses? Some people were about to retire and go to Florida or go somewhere down south where the living expenses are a lot less. And now they can't sell their house and retire anymore. So you have to pay. I don't know if it's just them, their company alone, but I know the railroad system, I think it was like $10 billion of profit. $10 billion of profit that they got. They would be forced to pay those people in that town, I think. But
yeah, it was last year that they did $10 billion in stock buybacks. Norfolk Southern did. But
and exactly they did stock buyback. That it all wraps up into the topics that we had today. I didn't even realize that. That's true.
And I was gonna say I'm seeing CNN here too. This was
what was it?
A few days ago.
10 billion.
It was 10 billion that they did for stock buybacks last year in March 2022, and they're paying 6.5 million to the derailment visits. And I don't necessarily. It took me a minute to realize like how big $1 billion actually is. I'm like, it's $1,000 million, and that sounds completely ludicrous to me when I say it that way.
Yeah,
but it is. It's $1,000 million, $1 billion, and they did that 10 times. So I was like, it's just. Yeah, I was like, it's just an insult.
They can make that whole town solvent.
Yeah,
with just $1 billion and make sure that whole town is good and do a full cleanup. Probably evacuate the area for a while because nobody should be living there for years.
Yes,
and But that's what, and I wish we had people in the Congress pushing this narrative and also setting up for a true leftist to primary Biden by saying a leftist would have done a lot more if they were president of the United States.
I think some of the like rail worker unions were talking about their response to this is like, let's look at nationalizing them. And no progressive has like really put like fire behind that. Like, hey, there's real workers who are talking about nationalizing. Let's talk, if you have a huge base, right? You have 15 million followers, explain to your people why we need to nationalize this thing. Send a letter to Biden saying, we need to nationalize this. Call a press conference and say we need to nationalize this. Go to Ohio and support the people who are saying we need to nationalize.
And you see how quick that puts pressure on these train companies to say, okay, we need to put on the safety valves and the safety axles and all the brakes, the new technology brakes that right now they're working off a Civil War era technology. Like you see how fast they will pay to fix all their trains once you start talking about nationalizing these train systems.
What that means. That means it's going to be zero profit. So it's either give up
10% of your profits. Because, like David said, they had $10 billion. If they would have just paid a $1 billion into making sure the rails were safe and the infrastructure, they could continue. But we need to take away that profit incentive and just straight up nationalize. I see. Much love to you, Janice Anderson, and Bruce Jackson is also in the building. A person named Gup is in the building. And Janice said Middlesex County Water Company in New Jersey, that's my state, has terrible water as well, more than 4 times the legal allowed amount of PFAS. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it sounds bad. But that's all around the country. It's not just Flint. Flint was kind of that made it national that we had water issues. And that's the first thing I think of when I think of bad water in America is Flint, Michigan. But all across the nation, we have thousands of towns with poor water systems, and we definitely need to fix the infrastructure. So as we wrap up, we got 3 minutes left. I want to play this guy. His name is Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank.
Oh, Lord.
And he's just a capitalist through and through. Oh, my goodness. So I think I have 2 clips real quick that I could play. Let me have it here. Boom. Right.
I want to become wealth. This is according to Oxfam. Of the world's 85 richest people, is equal to the 3.5 billion poorest people.
It's fantastic. And this is a great thing because it inspires everybody, gets the motivation to look up to the 1% and say, I want to become one of those people. I'm going to fight hard to get up to the top. This is fantastic news, and of course I applaud it. What can be wrong with this?
Really?
Yes, really.
Somebody living on
I celebrate capitalism.
$1 a day in Africa is getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to be Bill Gates.
That's the motivation everybody needs.
Between me and
I'm
that
not
guy
against
is
charity.
Motivation. I just need to pull up my socks.
I am not.
Wait, I don't have socks.
Look, don't.
Oh my! Sometimes what is he a troll? Is he trolling us? Like, is he serious? Oh my goodness! I got one more clip that I'm gonna play. One more.
Entrepreneurship. Elizabeth Warren will punish you for success. She will make sure you pay super taxes if you're successful. The regulatory environment there is prohibitive for business. New York, even worse. New Jersey, forget about it. California is not in business. You can't do business there. And they're leaving like droves out of there. So this competition of states is beginning to occur. I can put money anywhere. Anywhere. Why? Because the pandemic changed our economy. 40% of my staff at every company, regardless what city they're headquartered in, works remotely. That's never going to change. Primarily in accounting, logistics, some marketing positions, certainly sales. You just don't need to be in the office anymore. I know there's guys trying to get everybody back, but you can see through empty buildings in New York City. They're just not coming back. They're never going to. They don't want.
All right, enough of this guy. But he basically in this video, he's talking about tax the rich, and he's so petrified. These guys who have all the money in the world are so scared of you just getting taxed a little bit of that money to pay for them to pay their fair share of in society. So Thank you so much for coming on the show, David and Kimberly. Let me just give a shout out, and I'm going to come back to you all to give your outros. But much love to you, Agup, Steve, Kat Terrell, Paul Patrick, Janice Anderson, Holly Horn, PJ Chris, if you're out there. Who else? Steve was here. Let's see who else was here. Much love to Ware Pilgrim, Jamin M93. Thank you for coming through. Paul Patrick, Cheryl Patrick. All right, Kat Terrell. Hopefully I said everybody. Much love to all of y'all. Let me be a gentleman. Kimberly, ladies first. Give us your first outro.
I guess I have not much to say, but thank you for having me on again. I always enjoy coming on. And yeah, I guess we'll see what the year holds. I'm scared of the situation that is occurring within the US. I don't think this is gonna amount to anything good.
Yeah, I hear you. All I got to say is hopefully, I hope you stay optimistic, and maybe we could see another run like the person in the chat was like, hey, is Kimberly going to run? Maybe not this time, this cycle, but sometime in the future. I think you got that fire.
Running again.
You got that fire. We'll see. We'll see what happens. David, my man.
Yeah, Mr. Wonderful. My goodness. He also was talking about how quiet quitting was a bad idea like a year ago. And I'm like, so of course he doesn't want to like respect boundaries at work or anything like that. But like to kind of like go back to where we started, I was like, I think that as if Marianne Williamson was really, really serious about wanting to become president, I think that this, as long as it was authentic, I think that this would be a really great opportunity for her to go to East Palestine and Flint and Jackson and be like, you know what, like as president, I see you and I would be fighting for you and allocating resources for you. And I think that could be a really great message of hope and like the politics of love that she is espousing. And I think that to be kind of on the front lines of those places, I think that could be really, really beneficial for her campaign. So yeah, that's where we did. But yeah, thank you for having me on. Day and I, you can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Call Me Limbo Pod, Patreon. Listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. So yeah.
100%. So I just want to give everybody one last thing before we go. I'm hoping to have Savvy Sabs on next Monday. I'm hoping to have her on the show. I talked to her, and everybody, David, Kimberly, you could come back next Monday, and we could have her as our guest, and we could talk CSQB clips as usual. But I'm also hoping to kind of premiere or just give a glimpse of the Mutual Aid Political Party initiative that I'm working on to show you all the site and see if we can take this to the next level and galvanize the people. It's about getting your neighbors together and building solidarity together and bypassing that capitalist system of using money all the time and just helping each other out. And we'll see if we can build a better world through the system. So thank you all for coming through. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that. See you next Monday. Adios.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.